Hi everyone.
Hi Gaurav.
Great. So today we're going to be, talking about a session which Vijay just briefed us about. It's going to be called 3-2-1. But I just want to set a little bit of a context before we start the session. Ever since Airbenders resumed their sessions, we've been taking things quite gradually, right? With by starting our sessions just once a week, we have this ground booked for just about 2 hours in that one session. And within the session, we've got so many things that are planned by our coaches and captains, right? We come and focus on our throws, we come and focus on our drills, a tad bit on our fitness as well. And towards the end, we've got a little bit of time to showcase ourselves in the game, right? How do we translate all of this knowledge that we have into how we play? And so 3-2-1, can someone tell me what resonates or what comes to your mind when I say 3-2-1 go?
Sprint.
All right, sprint. Sorry? Okay, start of a race. All right. Have you heard that anywhere else?
Check in. This game.
This can 3-2-1. When the defense is set and when your person who's pulling the disc is ready, he calls 3-2-1 and then pulls the disc. Everyone runs around with him, right? So it's just that momentum that we are actually going to be talking about over here. These series are largely to help every single player visualize and prepare themselves mentally better before a point, a game, or a tournament, right? And that's the reason why we're going to be spreading it out over a couple of sessions. Today we are largely going to be talking about person defense, and we're going to be getting into the basics, the fundamentals of how exactly does one approach person defense. Thanks Jaideep for holding the session today on the same line, because I feel that it brings out a lot of one-on-one caliber and one-on-one you come to know what you are capable of doing when this kind of a defense is set up. So on a person defense, I'm going to give you guys a scenario. Vijay is called the line, right? We've got 7 online, and he's called the matchups. When we play within our teams, we generally know the strengths and weaknesses of each individual. But more often than not, we might get paired up with people who we have never played with in a tournament, right? So what exactly, once Vijay is called the line, he's called the matchups. Before the pull goes up, I want to understand from each one of you over here, what is it that you guys actually have in your mind? What's your plan A, B, C? How are you preparing yourself in going and attacking the offense? How you're dominating that particular point, right? So we're going to be starting off with the first important point, which is the pull, for which no better person than Pixie to come and share with us as to why the pull is the most important thing once we start off on defense. Yeah. So Pixie, can I request you to?
Yeah. So the pull is what it starts the game. I mean, it's something that can give you real advantage when you start offense, and it's really so the best kind of a pull is a pull that floats and lands in field at the end of the end zone, at the back of the end zone. And trust me, when that pull, when you're under the pull and it's landing and you're at the back of the end zone, it's not going to roll out, and you can see the defense is already catching up. As an offensive player, you're already worried. What am I going to do? Okay, this is my next pass. I know there's no room behind me. I've got to go upfield only. That is the ideal pull, and it's not easy to do. I mean, even on you try on a half field, it's not easy to do. It will go out. It tends to waver here and there, and a pull is something that lots of teams take for granted. I rarely, I mean, I've not seen anyone practicing pulling. It is a very, very, very important aspect of the game. A short pull, you know, especially on a where, say, you're playing where the offense is playing against the wind. If you pull a short pull or a flat pull that's intercepted quickly, you've given the offense almost 30 yards. That's like 3 or 4 free passes, and that is something that I think we as a team need to really, really practice. The next kind of pull is, you know, the one I'm more comfortable with is the bladey pull, which it gives you more room for error. Okay, and I've seen a lot of people, you know, especially the Chennai teams, they start at one edge side of the field, pulls so that it goes out and comes back into the field. That looks good, but on all practical purposes, it's risky and it achieves the same output. Okay, so when I'm pulling a blade specifically, so I'm pulling a backhand outside in blade. See, this is your field. I'm pulling a backhand outside in blade. I'll not start at this edge. I'll start either in the center or at this corner, where the disc, I know that the disc is going to be in for the majority of its flight. And don't aim for the corner, aim for the center of the field. Let it, that's okay. Let it land and roll out, that's fine. IO pulls are something that I started out with. I started out with a lot of IO pulls. I never had the blade. It's something that I use now when, say, if I'm pulling against a strong wind. Okay, at that point of time, I'm not as confident with my bladey backhand, which is when I'll resort to an IO. But what I've seen, most teams, they've got their pullers. If you see the US team, they've got fantastic pullers who've got IO pulls, where it just, you know, it floats and it comes down, you know, and which is very, very unnerving when you're standing under the disc. When you get it and the defense is already set up. So yeah, so these are the two kinds of pulls that I usually use. It's the blade and the IO pull against the wind. But I think that this is something that, I mean, apart from Sanjay and me, I wouldn't say the team has any other pullers. No one else can even send the disc full field, which is, I mean, we've been playing for 7 years. That cannot be the case. Everyone's, I mean, is strong enough, and it's something that you develop. And I've not seen everyone, when you call the line, let me pull. But who's practiced that? No one's practiced that. You need to practice that and then earn the right to say, okay, give me the disc, let me pull. Cool. So that is my 2 cents on.
Why did you say that the Chennai pull is risky? What makes it risky?
So it's risky because see, a disc is only inbounds if it crosses the playing area. That's it. If it goes, let it go as high as possible. But if it lands out of bounds, the last place where the disc was inbounds was where you released it. So it would come in at your end zone corner. If you are pulling from the other corner, for example, it might still land out of bounds, but at least it's crossing some area of the field before it's landing. So worst case scenario, it will come in somewhere at the sideline here. So that's why never ever attempt that. It's just a show pull. Doesn't make any sense.
Also, it can hit something, objects outside, and then again it comes in the same.
Maybe Chennai has a lot of wind, so if they pull from here, it may go out this side. That's why they utilize it. But in Bangalore, they never do that. I think it's for strong side winds. They utilize it from that
That's
corner.
still risky. I mean, you know, strong side wind, I'd maybe pull
Then
from
it will, they are confident they can throw out and it will land inside.
That
Here
might be
it
the
will
only reason
throw
they
from
get
the- Yeah, that is the only thing.
Which is all right.
I remember Flywild, our first pull, they did this
Yeah.
what you told, and it was like against us semi-finals or something.
Semi-final.
The first
Never came in.
point itself. No, it didn't come. It went out there only. What you told. Because it
Which
was
is all right. I mean,
no
whatever
side wind in Bangalore.
works. Yeah, that's all right.
Fair enough. Cool.
Cool. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. So Thanks, Pix, for that.
Yeah.
Pull in itself is such an important subject or topic, right? That we can actually have a whole session on it. The reason why I started off on that was it's over and above what Pixie just shared. The person who actually puts in the effort to make the pull for the team knows how the wind works. All right, he puts in the effort of understanding. I mean, all this knowledge which Pixie shared with you is not overnight, right? And that's the reason why it is so important, you know, for the person who is actually stepping up to make the pull, to have that kind of practice and then come forward and initiate the game. Yeah. The second thing I want to talk about, what about the rest 6? The person is pulling, right? What is going on in the rest 6 of them who are there in the line? What's going on in their mind, right? You guys are also marking people. So what's your strategy? What's going on in your mind? What are you? They say defense wins game, right? Wins games. So what's going on in your mind? Are you in a position to dictate what you're going to allow, what you're not going to allow, or are you just there, you know, allowing whatever the offense is going to take, right? So that's something that I want to talk. A succession to what the pull topic was, I want to now touch base upon the person who's going to be marking the handler. Why is it important? When you run down, a floaty pull, the way you approach the handler, I'm going to be using the board now. All right. I hope everyone can see. We are running down this way. The defense is here. We have 7 on the line. The person who's going to be marking the handler, right? Generally, the force is decided before the pull, right? Say, for example, we're forcing force side, right? Now, more often than not, what I've seen is that we say, for example, L3, the third person over here is the handler, right? The person who's marking the handler directly runs to him and starts the stall count, right? Which is all right, right? I mean, which is all right, nothing wrong in it, as far as you're, you're not getting broken, and that's fine. But how can you be a little more effective? How could you be a little more effective? One way of doing this is what we call the sweep. The person who's going to run down on the handler can actually take a broader path and watch how it's going to come in. So you're going to be taking a broader path, right? And why this is happening is because from the beginning we are going to be shutting down the break side and then start narrowing down on who your handler is, right? So that's something that I've tried multiple number of times, and it is effective because you're then cancelling not just the first pass, you're taking out a couple of more options which might be available for the handler in the beginning. Yeah, so try sweeping the area more from the break side and then narrow down the corridor for the handler, right? Now these are things that are suggestions. You can probably improvise depending on how the pull is landing, right? If the pull is probably more floaty, you could probably take a different approach. If it's bladey, you could probably take a different approach. But it's just a suggestion, right? It's like I said in the beginning, these are things that will probably get you thinking, visualizing, and preparing yourself better for the point game and a tournament, right? And the next thing, once the defense is set on your person, right? I'm going to be taking the handler mark. I want Doc, could you just Pix, can you pass me this? We are forcing. You take this. Yeah. I'm going to be forcing Doc forehand, right? And what's my primary objective, right? So once Doc has got the disc, and we have decided as a team that we're going to be forcing a forehand, my primary objective over here is to allow Doc the forehand pass. What I'm not going to allow him is an inside out in the beginning, and more importantly, an around after that, right? What I'm going to allow Doc is of the forehand pass, which we have decided as a team. Many a times what we have observed is in the effort of getting a D, I've realized what people do is try to get a hand block, and they overcome it this side, and what ends up happening is we get broken, and that hurts the entire team, and that's not the objective here. We need to maintain the force. We need to allow. This is what we're allowing. We've got the whole downfield defense set on the force side, right? So I'm going to allow him this, and I'm going to trust my downfield defense to do their job, right? And not allow the inside out. After that, not allow. And that's how I'm dictating what the offense should be doing, right? Now on this, I would request Vijay to come and talk about how do you mark the dump defense and what needs to be going on in your mind when you're marking the dump defense.
So if Gaurav can you mark Doc? Doc has, if Doc has the disc and it's a force forehand, Talib. So if Talib is the dump defense, dump offense for Doc, and I'm marking Talib, there are a few things that I look at in these conditions. One is, in all probability, Doc will look for a dump beyond stall 5, and beyond stall 5 is one of the beyond stall 5 is one of the best chances of getting a turnover. So one, whenever I'm marking a dump defense, I'm always aggressive. Here Gaurav, if Gaurav says he will stop the arounds and I'm expected to stop the uplines, I tend to be aggressive. I'm not here saying, okay, I know Talib won't get it. Of course he won't get it, but I don't want an easy reset. I want to stop one side and challenge the other, not just stop one side. So what I would do is I would go close to him. I would go close to him where there is a doubt in Doc's mind whether to pass it to Talib or not. So I will be aggressive. The other thing that I tend to do is, especially with people who are really good in this position as offense, is I tend to play blind mark. A blind mark is when I don't know where the disc is. I'm constantly watching Talib over here and trying to mirror his hips. I'm light on my feet. I'm not flat-footed. I know his intention is to go upline and get a power position to throw. So I'm light on my feet and I try to mirror him on his hip movement. So this necessitates that you're light on your feet, and maybe you can also have your front foot pointing in a direction where you're ready to stop that. So these are elements that I look at, especially on dump defense. But I don't stop the aggression, and I tend to be closer to the person because I want, in addition to being hard on this person, I want Doc over here having a doubt in terms of whether he should pass it or not. So these are elements that I look for.
Great. So one question that I get asked very often is that why does, say for example, when newbies come to our sessions and they ask what is force side, and how do you mark? So how does it change from a handler to a downfield defense, right? That's something that confuses them a lot, right? So when I am marking a person with the disc and we are allowing a force side, I'm standing on one. Can you just? Yeah. So I'm standing on one side of the handler, and I'm allowing the force. So by force I mean to say that the team is allowing force forehand or force backhand, which means we are allowing that throw, which means we are standing on the opposite side. Now what does it mean for the downfield defense? It means that you need to stand on the opposite side. Downfield defense will be on the force side. So this switch generally is something that that's how the game is played, and it's done so that we make it harder for the offense to progress the disc forward. Right? And coming to the downfield defense, I would request Doc to take us through a tad bit of triangulation, which he had earlier spoken about. So people who had missed that out, kindly just focus and we can have this wrapped up after that. Yeah?
You don't have.
No, it's hard.
So triangulation is a strategy which downfield defense can employ, where at every point or at most of the points they should be able to know where their person is, which they are marking, and where there is a disc. So if someone is marking the last person in the stack, it's sort of they form an imaginary triangle between disc or the person with the disc, themselves and the person. This triangle's sides will keep on changing because it is a dynamic thing, but at most of the point, if you are knowing where is your person, where is the disc, you will be able to defend better your person. Obviously, many times it will happen that you can only know where only one person, especially if you are nearer the stack. So in that case, what will happen is you will not able to look at the disc too much. You will be still able to know where is the person. In that case, what you have to do, try to take a snapshot whenever the disc moves, where the disc is moving, and try to rearrange your position. Why is it important is every time the disc moves, you should be able to rearrange your position. You want to be where you want to be in between the person and where the person wants to go. You want to be in the way. If you are taking away the in cuts, so suppose if the person who is in third in the stack, and if you are taking away the in cuts, and in the beginning if you are in the front in the vertical stack, if you are here, this is a good position. But suppose if your person is going this side, now you cannot say I'm on the 4 side and stand here, because the person will come straight here and get the disc. So if the person is at a different angle, you have to change as the person moves. You have to able to change. Now the person wants to come here and you are in between. Similarly, rather than this person moving, if the disc moves here, that happens most of the times. A dump happens and you are stuck here. Then again you are in a good position because this person is able to come here and get the disc. So in that case, the taking a snapshot helps, because if you know at stall 3, 4, 5 nothing is moving, you take a snapshot and the disc has moved this side. So you should be able to change your position and come here to prevent the in cuts. So this is something which requires a lot of practice, but triangulation is something which you should be able to always know where your person is, and most of the times as much as possible able to know where the disc is. And at the point of, if it's a long huck, it is always better if you see the release of the huck at the time when the huck is happening, then you will be able to better contest the deep throw. If you just rely on outside people, and if you are last person, you're marking the person in without seeing the disc, and you just rely on the outside call of up and you see the disc, you will not be able to contest the deep pass as commonly if you look at the disc. Also, if you are way away from the disc, it makes sense to not, even if you are marking an in cut, to stand facing the disc. So you can see the disc when the person is reeling. You can still make a run down deep, because you don't have to change your hip position. You are watching the disc as this person is watching the disc. The closer you are to the disc, obviously you can't stand here because this person will immediately get the disc. So again, even if you are preventing a in cut, you can still turn around and watch the disc and also help with the defense. So these are 2-3 points. Other point which I wanted to tell about triangulation and just helping with the downfield defenses, what to do when, and this happens a lot of time, what to do when your person goes on the break side. So one thing is, you have to trust your person who is having a disc mark, that they will prevent the inside out cut, inside out IO throw. So as soon as the person takes 2 steps here, you don't have to rush or accelerate at the same speed towards this person, because then it becomes very easy for them to change the direction and get a 4-side easy pass. What I tend to do, or what many people do, is as soon as the person goes here, at that time he or she, that person is in a dead space actually. You can at that time take a snapshot of what is happening and see if the thrower is in a releasing the disc or not even looking at the person, or he's taking a hammer or he's going around pivot. If the person is doing IO, you will have a bid because you know the throw is when is the throw is happening. So as soon as your person takes 2 steps, just have a snapshot at the disc, and depending on what is happening, if he's trying to do this, you can then decide to either go this, or if you don't have, it's not your fault if this pass happens. As soon as it happens, you have to decide whether you will be able to intercept it or not. If not, go this side and prevent the next pass. If a person is throwing a hammer, then you will have, because it's a hammer, it's a loopy pass, you will have again no chance to bid. A third pass which can happen is a round throw. Again, it's a loopy pass and you can decide to either intercept it or again swing and prevent the next throw. But what you should not do is, as soon as the person cuts to the break side, accelerate at the same speed. Maybe give them 1 step extra and take a snapshot at that time, because they are in a dead space right now. Because this happens many times, the person goes break side and comes back and gets the disc. So this is one thing which you can try to employ.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that, Doc. So guys, there were a lot of pointers that Doc, Vijay and Pixie shared with us today. The reason why these pointers are important is so that the next time we come for a session, and when the coach announces that we're going to be starting a game now, you're going to be making a difference. Prepare yourself. I mean, you've got so much of knowledge which is coming your way. Start analyzing what exactly is it that I'm going to bring on board, which is going to make this particular point different. How am I going to dictate my defense, right? It's very easy to I mean, the difference between a fun and a competitive game and a sloppy and a casual game is the mindset in which we come, right? So get these pointers in, reflect on whatever was just said. For those who have missed out, we've got a recording of this as well, and I'm glad we started off with a basic person defense today. So try and see if you can visualize and prepare yourselves better for the next session. Awesome.